Here at the Ace Hotel, going to talk a little bit about Walter Benjamin's The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. This work is one of the seminal works of media studies, of art theory, of film studies. It's just a foundational work that you have to know in order to think a little bit more deeply about what's happened in the 88 years since Walter Benjamin wrote this piece. So I'm going to actually begin following this deformance idea with a short reading from section 9 of this work. This is Benjamin. What matters is that the part acted is not for the audience, but for the mechanical contrivance. When he is worrying in section 8 about the loss of aura that inheres when acting is now happening for a mechanical device rather than for people, the stripping away of humanity that he imagines is completely pent up in his theory of aura. Remember that he imagines kind of an ideal setting of aura would be sitting outside on a summer's day and allowing your eye to traverse the horizon and the play of shadows falling from the mountains as you are sitting there. In other words, an irreproducible moment conveyed to you by the beauty of a landscape that's objectively there and that affects your perception and your sense of humanity. But, he says, as machines have inserted themselves into the process of human perception and meaning-making, so too aura has been lost or been compromised by this insertion of the mechanical. Now, certainly, and I'm thinking here of Matt Kirschenbaum's work in Mechanisms, the idea of a digital copy is itself a material artifact, that every act of accessing a digital copy is in fact accessing a materially unique object because the file is stored in different places and it has a different forensic imprimatur. Then it doesn't have it objectively, it has it uniquely, each point of access, each point that one touches it. So there are many things that I want you to get from reading The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. I think I'll begin with the epilogue, which is probably going to be the most confusing part for you. Basically what Benjamin is claiming is that aura-less art works to promote a fascistic comprehension of property rights and human agency. In other words, he really sees that what a fascistic aesthetic does is it promotes the idea that people can just share and exchange ideas, think social media, that people can just express themselves rather than agitate for the sorts of changes in property relations that would upset class structure per se. What that means is that an aura-less art has less transformative potential for individual viewers and works instead to reinforce property structures as they already exist. For me, I'm holding an iPhone right now. I'm writing on a MacBook. The irony of that is palpable. The cult of personality that Benjamin associates with Hitler, one could also say of Steve Jobs. That the cult of personality, which is to say, not the sort of aura-filled representation of humanity that art can convey to us, but instead a manufactured one that supports the promotion of commodities. That kind of orientation, he thinks, is easily co-opted by a fascistic politics that would distance us from aura. Now, he also talks a bit about the Dadaists. They were the absurdist French early 20th century artists who deliberately denied the capacity. It was a functionless art. They didn't want to court aura in any way. They put their art. They created word salad. They created nonsense. They put their art and made it look like advertising objects. And Benjamin calls this a sort of tactile, like ballistic force of art, that it shocked people out of complacency. And I can think of some examples in art being produced right now where that's certainly the case. And when I'm done writing about it, I'll send it to you. But for Benjamin, the aura is a category of artistic production that has to be emptied out before it can be filled with anything else. And his skepticism of the role of technology in making us complicit with its seduction to the easy copy, it's the ease of sharing what we make. I think that the applicability of this work by Benjamin into our class and the introduction of a medial approach to the humanities is to say, well, we are caught up in the notion of making, but indeed the sorts of sharing that we do might be, according to Benjamin, complicit with a kind of fascistic politics that actually erases our power and becomes, as Marx would say, perhaps the opiate of the masses. One thinks about all the internet memes one sees deriding, say, global warming or, objecting to very real political situations in the world, but we spend our creative energy making memes about them and sharing them, a sort of emptying out of any kind of urgency that might affect change, that materially changes property, like how we move property through the world and different people's access to it. So that, I suppose, is one way of thinking a little bit about the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction. He spends a lot of time thinking a bit about the social significance of art, and I encourage you to go through and pick maybe 2 or 3 quotations that resonated with you, and then bring them into class, and we'll talk about them. Because this particular essay is so storied, is so influential, it would be very hard for me to gloss all of it for you with any kind of efficiency. Better, I think, to take a more piecemeal approach, but one that might approximate our interests and serve the needs of our class. Because, of course, I think that you'll actually learn a lot about what Benjamin means by actually working through your own adaptations and thinking about the movement of authenticity from copy to original idea. I mean, in some ways, I wonder if the authenticity that Benjamin extols is not a property of the art object itself, but a relational aesthetic, a sort of a transference, ephemeral experience of the art that resides within us. But then we return to the problem with which we opened this mini lecture, which is we no longer have a shared common core, a canon of accepted texts or approaches. We have instead, as Stephen Ramsey might suggest in this hermeneutical imperative, a series of pathways that might meet, as they did in the comments to Mark Sample's Deformed Humanities piece, that might meet for a few moments, engage, and then disperse again. So here's Matt Kirschenbaum in his essay, The Textual Condition, in this new book edited by Jessica Pressman and Catherine Hales called Comparative Textual Media. This is Kirschenbaum on page 60. One can, in a very literal sense, never access the same electronic file twice, because each and every access constitutes a distinct instance of the file that will be addressed and stored in a unique location in computer memory. In the terms I've put forth in mechanisms, each access engenders a new logical entity that is forensically individuated at the level of its physical representation. What this means is that it's a new thing every time. Access is thus duplication. Duplication is preservation, and preservation is creation and recreation. This is the catechism of the textual condition. If only it were that simple, he says. So what does this mean vis-a-vis Benjamin? Well, it means a couple of things. It means that the aura that Benjamin eulogizes in the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction is differently imagined and situated in a digital context. That there is a kind of Nick Montfort called it aura-less. It's an aura-less exchange because everything you read is a copy. There's no such thing as an original. And because of that, human perception of the art object and what it means to engage art is changing.